Am I behind in life? I'm 27 years old. And lately, I've noticed that a lot of people around my age seem to be asking themselves that same question. This video isn't about blaming anyone. It's not about complaining. And it's definitely not about pretending I have all the answers. I just wanted to share some observations from my own life. Because if you're in your 20s right now, there's a good chance you've felt some of these things too. Maybe you've worked hard. Maybe you've done everything people told you to do. And yet somehow, it still feels like you're struggling to reach milestones that previous generations seem to achieve much earlier. So here are a few things I've noticed. The first is work and financial success. Growing up, most of us were given a fairly simple formula. Get an education, learn useful skills, work hard, save your money, build a career, and eventually you'll be able to afford a home, support a family, and build a comfortable life. That's what I tried to do. I completed a science degree, then a master's degree. I learned how to code. I worked multiple jobs while studying. I rarely went on holidays. I didn't spend much money. I ate healthy, gym 5 days a week, no smoking or alcohol, and focused almost entirely on building my future. After graduating, I applied for hundreds of jobs. I sent emails, made phone calls, reached out online, asked people in person. Eventually, I was fortunate enough to land a job that I enjoy, and I'm grateful for that. But even after years of effort, saving, and doing what I thought were all the right things, the reality was disappointing. Everything I had managed to save, combined with what I could borrow, was enough for only a relatively small piece of a modest property. Again, this isn't a complaint. Compared to many people, I'm actually fortunate. The point is that many people in their 20s today are discovering that even when they achieve what would traditionally be considered success, it still doesn't necessarily lead to the outcomes they expected. And that creates a strange feeling, because on paper, you're doing well. But emotionally, it can still feel like you're falling behind. The second observation is that the economic environment today feels very different from what previous generations experienced. If you talk to your parents or grandparents, many of them entered adulthood during a completely different period. Jobs were different, housing was different, the cost of living was different. The pathway from education to employment often seemed much more direct. Today, many young adults are highly educated, highly skilled, and working harder than ever. Yet many still struggle with housing costs, rising expenses, and the challenge of building long-term financial security. Asking what's the point of trying? As a result, a lot of people feel stuck, not because they're lazy, not because they lack ambition, but because the finish line seems to keep moving further away. And the strange part is that most people don't openly talk about it, especially men. Many conversations stay on the surface. Everyone says they're doing fine. Everyone posts highlights online. But behind the scenes, a lot of people are stressed about rent, bills, career progression, and the future. The third thing I've noticed is relationships. And this is probably the most sensitive topic, because despite all our technology and connectivity, many people seem to be finding relationships harder than ever. Of course, there are still good people out there. Healthy relationships do exist. But social media has changed expectations in ways that are difficult to ignore. We're constantly exposed to carefully selected snapshots of other people's lives. Perfect holidays, extravagant weddings, perfect relationships, perfect bodies, perfect careers. And after seeing thousands of these images, it's easy to start comparing reality to a fantasy. The problem is that real relationships aren't perfect. Real people aren't perfect. Every healthy relationship requires compromise, patience, forgiveness, communication, and mutual respect. But those qualities rarely go viral. What often gets attention are extremes. Conflict gets attention. Outrage gets attention. Division gets attention. And after enough exposure, it's easy to start viewing the opposite sex as the enemy instead of a teammate. That's one reason why I don't use platforms like TikTok and Instagram. Not because social media is entirely bad, but because I think what we consume eventually shapes how we see the world, even subconsciously. And finally, that brings me to the internet itself. This is probably the biggest paradox of modern life. We are more connected than any generation in human history. We can communicate with people across the world instantly. We have access to almost unlimited information. We can join communities for practically any interest imaginable. And yet, loneliness seems to be a common experience for many people. It's strange, because we're surrounded by digital connection, but genuine human connection often feels harder to find. Many of us spend hours interacting with screens while spending less time interacting face to face, and I think that's something worth reflecting on. At the same time, I don't think the answer is to romanticize the past. Every generation has faced challenges. The 1900s weren't perfect, and neither are the 2000s. We have opportunities today that previous generations could never have imagined. Access to information, global communication, technological advances, remote work, new career paths, medical improvements. There are genuine advantages to being young today, but there are also unique challenges, and I think both things can be true at the same time. So if you're in your 20s or even your 30s and sometimes feel like you're behind in life, you're probably not alone. A lot of people are quietly navigating the same uncertainties, trying to build a career, trying to find meaningful relationships, trying to afford a future, trying to figure out where they fit in. And maybe the goal isn't to compare ourselves to previous generations. Maybe the goal is simply to make the most of the circumstances we've been given, to focus on what we can control, to appreciate what we have, and to keep moving forward even when progress feels slower than we'd like. Those are just my observations. I'd genuinely be interested to hear yours. Do you think life for young adults today is harder, easier, or just different? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.